Hi everybody! So in this video, I'm going over a very common contraction that French Canadians make that involve the pronouns il and elle, which is the equivalent of he and she. So if you really want to know how French Canadian sounds, be sure to stick around. Bonjour tout le monde! Welcome back to Learn French with Nat. So if you're new to my channel, well, welcome! Bienvenue! I make videos to help you learn French, but with a Canadian, Quebec twist. So I love to make videos about vocabulary or expressions, but sometimes I like to make videos like this one where I go over the fun, quirky things that French Canadians say. Alright? So be sure to subscribe and to ring that bell to make sure you don't miss any content. Alright? Let's get into the lesson. This should be a relatively short video, I think. But I really wanted you to understand or get used to how Canadian French people sound. You don't have to replicate it. You don't have to do the contractions I'm about to talk about, but it's important for you to be able to recognize them. So if you ever come here, you'll understand what we're saying. All right? So the contractions that we're going to talk about are the contractions of il and elle. These contractions are never used in written French. Okay? This is really just in conversational French that you're going to hear on the street or when you hear people talking, okay? And if you're a beginner French learner, don't get overwhelmed by this video and don't get discouraged because you don't need to use these contractions. You can use the proper way of saying it. It's just fun to go over it, okay? So here in Canada, especially Quebec, we tend to like to make the words and the sentences as short as possible. So what we do, we contract il and elle by basically removing the consonants at the end. So let's start with il. Il is the equivalent of he, right? Il est, he is. So what we do, we remove the L at the end of il. So it sounds like I. Instead of il, it sounds like I. So let me give you a few sentences to get used to it, okay? Il s'en va au magasin becomes il s'en va au magasin. Il s'en va au magasin. Il mange son dessert becomes il mange son dessert. Il fait ses devoirs becomes il fait ses devoirs. Il a fini son travail is il a fini son travail. Do you see how I put the Y and I kind of dragged it to the A, so it's il a fini ses devoirs. Okay? Now when il is used with the verb etre, which is a verb to be, we also changed the sound of the verb. Okay? So let me give you an example. Il est parti à la pêche. So the il becomes I, again, like before, and le est becomes a E. So, il est parti à la pêche. Okay? Il est parti à la pêche becomes il est parti à la pêche. Il est allé se baigner, il est allé se baigner. Il est allé se baigner. Okay? Il est parti en voyage, il est parti en voyage. So for il, ils, it's basically the same thing. We know it's plural because the verb is conjugated in the plural form, okay? Let me give you an example. Ils s'en vont au magasin becomes ils s'en vont au magasin. Ils font leurs devoirs becomes ils font leurs devoirs. Ils ont mangé leur dessert, ils ont mangé leur dessert. Or some people say ils ont mangé leur dessert. They drag the S even though we've cut it out, okay? So ils ont mangé leur dessert or ils ont mangé leur dessert. I don't know, what can I say? It's crazy. I don't know why we do this. Anyways, let's keep going. So let's move on with elle. Elle is the same thing. We contract the elle, at the end. So we left with the son est, okay? So let me give you a few examples with the same sentences, okay? Elle s'en va au magasin becomes elle s'en va au magasin. Elle s'en va au magasin. So it's only the son est. Elle mange son dessert becomes elle mange son dessert. Elle, we cut the L's. Elle mange son dessert. Elle fait ses devoirs. Elle fait ses devoirs. So we cut the L's out completely. Elle fait ses devoirs. Now this is where it gets really interesting. If we're using elle with the verbs avoir or etre, we remove it completely most of the time, okay? Probably because these verbs start with vowels. We can't have two vowel sounds together. It doesn't work. Okay, so let me give you a few examples with the verb avoir, which is the verb to have, okay? Elle a fini son travail becomes a fini son travail, okay? Elle a perdu son chat. Elle a perdu son chat becomes a perdu son chat. Do you see how I cut them out completely? So it's the same with the verb être, okay? Let's go over 2-3 examples. Elle est partie à la pêche becomes est partie à la pêche, okay? Elle's gone, cut it out, it's out there, okay? We got rid of it. Elle est allée se baigner. Est allée se baigner, okay? Est allée se baigner. We cut it out completely. Last one. Elle est partie en voyage. Est partie en voyage. We cut it out again. So same rule applies with the elle au pluriel, E-L-L-E-S, which is they. It's the same thing with the il, okay? I'll give you 2 examples. Elles s'en vont au magasin becomes elles s'en vont au magasin, okay? Or, elles ont mangé leur dessert becomes elles ont mangé leur dessert. So it becomes we drag the S, ont mangé leur dessert. Whew! That was something. I think that was a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. But I wanted to give you a few examples of how it sounds in quick French. But like I said, don't get overwhelmed. Just recognize it. You don't have to use it, okay? It's just an interesting quirk that, you know, French Canadians, especially here in Quebec, I think, do. So that's it for today, guys. Be sure to check out my other video on how French Canadians pronounce the letters T and D. It's not what you would expect, all right? Merci les amis. À la prochaine.